Hi, I'm Jill Hammonds. So welcome to the first Live the Adventure presentation of the year, Triumph After Trauma, a presentation about the amazing C.A.R.E program at our Naval Center Hospital, which is right in our own backyard. Thank you very much. That has helped thousands of terribly injured, wounded warriors by reconstructing and rehabilitating the whole person, physically and emotionally. Tonight's speakers are indeed heroes and mega stars in their own right. A top reconstructive plastic surgeon, a wonderful, stellar, empathetic nurse, and the amazing father of a wounded warrior. We had hoped that Jason Ross, the young Marine who stepped on an IED in 2011 and was severely injured, requiring and enduring hundreds of surgeries, would be here tonight. However, he recently was competing in a sled hockey game and crashed and sustained some injuries. His father, George, will speak on his behalf. So here on the ship, we all have call signs. Mac McLaughlin, our CEO, gave me my call sign as Niagara Falls because I get weepy at the drop of a hat. I am amazed at the bravery and the courage that our military men and women display on a daily basis. It's events like this one that makes me truly, truly feel the swelling patriotism and love of country that I truly have in my heart. Without the people that we are featuring tonight, these three amazing speakers, our world would be a different place. Their sacrifices and their brilliance and their dedication, as well as their relentless caring, creates a better world. I'm starting. I get tearful with pride and a deep, sincere gratefulness when folks step up and make the decision to not only help, but to become key, vital players in making those who keep our country free whole again and intact by restoring their dignity and their humanness. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Scott McGaw, the MC for tonight. He's the Director of Marketing, and he will take over now. Thank you.
You know, it's a sad commentary to think about. Almost for this entire century, the 21st century, we've seen news clips of young Americans coming home either in caskets or wounded, primarily from the Middle East. It's now north of 50,000 young men and women who have been wounded. 52,000, I believe it is right now. Anybody here from Santee? No? Santee. Imagine every single man, woman, child, grandfather, aunt, uncle in Santee wounded. That's the population of the number of people who have been wounded in service to our country. Or the entire population of National City, or Poway, or La Mesa. It's just extraordinary that is taking place. And there's obviously some very good things about that, if you will, survivability, and also some ramifications that sometimes are heartbreaking and yet also inspiring that you're going to hear about tonight. You know, in the old days, in, say, Vietnam, they talked about the golden hour. That first hour, getting to a wounded Marine or soldier or whatever, and getting him the care, initial care, triage necessary to give him literally a fighting chance at survival. We had an earlier Live the Adventure event about a year ago about battlefield medicine, and the trauma care nurses there who were just back from Afghanistan talk about the platinum 10 minutes. And how a trauma nurse was expected to, in the middle of the night, in the dark, in the back of a helicopter, get a needle in the arm of a wounded sailor or soldier in order to give him or her a chance at survival. And today, in the Middle East, for example, if a wounded soldier can get to a trauma care hospital at the edge of the battlefield, still alive, he stands a 95% chance of survival. It's just amazing what the frontline personnel are doing for our sons and daughters and fathers and brothers who are serving us in the name of freedom around the world. That, of course, has huge ramifications to everyone here and at home. We have, obviously, sailors and soldiers and Marines coming home with far more complex, far more horrible, for lack of a better word, injuries, broken and bleeding in ways that me personally can't begin to imagine that medical professionals, healthcare professionals are dealing with, and 58,000 family members are dealing with on a daily basis. And that's what we're going to hear about tonight. And yet even within that, there's a silver lining. I've had the privilege of writing a couple of books about military medicine and how much of our civilian healthcare is either pioneered or validated on the battlefield, going all the way back to x-rays and penicillin and transfusions more than 100 years ago. Some of the extraordinary advances that are taking place from a research standpoint, from a case care standpoint, case study standpoint, right here at Naval Medical Center San Diego, already and certainly will, to a greater extent, influence and drive improvements in civilian healthcare, trauma care as well. That, of course, takes nothing away from the horrible suffering that these men and women are going through in uniform, as well as that of their families. But tonight we're going to meet some folks who are on the front lines of this kind of research, this kind of care, these kinds of advances, and the kind of coping that takes place when a young man or woman comes home so badly broken and bleeding. Each of our panelists is going to come up and make a brief presentation and then take a chair here on the stage. Please think about some questions you want to ask, and once we get through all three, I might have a couple of follow-up questions, and then certainly we're going to open up to the audience so that you can ask your personal questions of any of our three panel members. Our first panelist is going to be our presenter is Dr. Jan Ortiz-Pomales. He is a board-certified plastic and general surgeon. He leads the plastic surgery research and education programs at Naval Medical Center San Diego. He has a medical degree from Georgetown University, and he has served aboard the USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier. Lieutenant Commander Ortiz's goal is pretty straightforward, and I love this. You cut through all the resume stuff and all the good things that he's doing and so on. This man is here for just a couple reasons. Serve in the United States Navy as a surgeon, teacher, and researcher. I suspect that there are a whole lot of active duty personnel and ultimately civilian patients who are already benefiting from this man's dedication. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dr. Ortiz.
You know, I first want to start by thanking you all for the opportunity for me to come out and talk to you about our CARE program. It's something that I've been part of for the last 2 years since I returned from my training. It's something that I truly believe in, and I want as many people to know about it so that we can spread the word and ensure that every wounded warrior that's out there that is not part of the program yet takes advantage of all we have to offer, which is something that I'm going to teach you guys about today, okay? The CARE program, our vision is to redefine post-traumatic rehab through collaboration of military providers that are all volunteering their time for this program. It's not part of our normal daily duties. To really replace the reactive to a proactive paradigm in rehabilitation through therapies that are all in a multidisciplinary fashion that include both medical and surgical care, through collaborations with the DoD, the VA, and other centers, civilian centers of excellence, while maintaining a commitment to research and education to ensure that what we're doing is the most cutting-edge technology and we're employing that. Our mission is to improve appearance, function, and self-esteem, not necessarily on that same order, but they're all interrelated. And the way that we're doing that is by providing medical, surgical, and mental health services. We're also employing a lot of our emerging therapies that are being done in some of the best training facilities in the nation. Some of them are targeted muscle reinnervation to improve the function of the amputation site for the new prosthetics that are being developed nowadays. Osseointegration, I'll go a little bit more of that in detail later. Advanced prosthetics, reconstructive transplantation, regenerative medicine, and that's only just a few of them to mention them. The CARE program really falls under the umbrella of the C5 program, which is the Wounded Warrior program. And it's pretty complex. You can see all the things that are involved there, but the CARE program really is the only advanced reconstructive program for surgeries to improve the rehabilitation of our patients. Our organizational structure includes 2 administrative positions, and on the clinical side, We have a PA that does all the screenings, carries out all the treatment plans, actually does some of the procedures on these patients. We have a clinical care coordinator. We have a research coordinator. And then some of the providers that are part of our team are all people from the plastic surgery team, the dermatology, orthopedics, ENT, OMFS, and oculoplastics. So we put all of our heads together so that we can figure out what is the best thing and the best surgical technique for that patient to ensure that they have adequate rehabilitation and integration back to life when they return back from theater with wounds. Initially, when they enroll into the rehab and start the rehab course, our physician assistant, our PA, facilitates a treatment plan. Then our care coordinator organizes all the multidisciplinary care so that all the surgical providers, the non-surgical providers, and the emotional support through mental health is all on board. And so the patient is actually guided through the process rather than them having to try to figure that out on their own, which can be a little overwhelming. One of the things that we've noticed and a lot of our patients have lived is the fact that a lot of these reconstructive procedures and rehabilitation takes months, if not years. So having an adequate support network is extremely important, which is why we've been really working hard to make it a multidisciplinary team so that we can address all those issues for the patients on the long run, including aftercare. A lot of our patients move around. Some of them transfer their care to the VA or to a civilian facility. Well, by developing partnerships with these civilian facilities, we ensure that the care is continued without any alterations in the treatment plan. Some of the clinical benefits, I'm not sure I don't know if you can see the red in there, but some of the benefits from this model have been that we've reduced the average number of days to being seen and treated from 45 days to 21 days. And the number of patient visits from 3 to 1. We essentially are getting together as providers, bringing the patient in, and then we go to the patient, rather than having the patient try to navigate the system to set up appointments in 7 different clinics, which can be extremely difficult for a patient to do. So we just all come to the patient. At the same time, we can coordinate the care. If one of us is taking them to surgery, we figure out who else can do something else so that we can do everything under the same anesthesia. This is a patient of mine, a chief, that I've gotten to know really, really well. He, about a year and a half ago, had an accident on the flight deck of a carrier, just like this one. He was blown by the jet blast, and he was dragged on the flight deck by an incoming F-18 that was being moved. And as a consequence, he suffered a traumatic right amputation above the knee, and he had a degloving injury of the left lower extremity from the hip all the way to the toes. You can somewhat appreciate that on the pictures. And through the process of the CARE program, and in about 5 months, multiple surgeries, and about 4,000 square centimeters of skin grafts on this patient, multiple lasers for contraction releases, and in fact, he underwent the osseointegration amputee program that we're doing now. He was able to do this. This is at 5 months after injury. And I don't know if you can notice something funny about that prosthetic. You can appreciate it on right here. It's not the normal prosthetic that wraps around the amputation site, the stump. We now are doing it's a rod with a latch that goes into the femur, into the bone of the stump. And to that latch, we can either plug in or disconnect the prosthetic. It's a new process that we're doing. It's done at Walter Reed, but we are communicating and having our patients go through the process here too. And he's one of 10 patients that have had this done in the last year. Some of the other clinical benefits are the scar contracture management, optimal functional outcomes through surgeries that are going to rehabilitate to ensure that the patient maximizes their strength, the range of motion and prosthetic tolerance. Remember, everything we're doing is not just about appearance. It's really about returning to function. And returning to a function so that these patients can go back to the things that make them happy, whether that be sports or going for a hike or going for a swim. Also, as part of their recovery, it has to be part of the recovery is the mental health. We've ensured that at least 70% of our patients have enrolled in some sort of mental health program. And we now have 100% compliance because not everyone wants it. But at least we try to educate our patients about what they have available, and about 70% of them have actually agreed to them. I think one of the most extraordinary things about our program is that we have a lot of partnerships with civilian centers, and then I'll go more into detail. So whatever issue we cannot provide at Naval Medical Center San Diego, we will augment our capabilities through some of these relationships we have with other hospitals. Obviously, there's some cost savings that come with it too, because everything is combined and we're going to the patient rather than the patient having to go to so many appointments, which sometimes if you're taking cabs or if you're having to arrange for appointments, it's extremely difficult for someone to be able to afford all of those. Another thing that I'm involved with is the C.A.R.E Summit. I'm the summit director. It is a state-of-the-art emerging therapy conference that we hold here at NMCSD every year. The next one's coming up in September, where we bring surgeons and providers from all over the nation to tell us about their new techniques, teach us through a cadaver lab so that we are employing the latest and most novel therapies, and also communicate so that we can figure out which patients can benefit from what therapy. This is a save the date. It's free and everyone's welcome to come. It's from September 18th through the 21st. If you Google Project C.A.R.E Summit, you'll be able to find the registration. One of the most important things we want to restore through the C.A.R.E program is an enhanced faith and trust in military medicine. Through treating all these patients that are coming back from combat and with all the injuries that they're going through, there's no reason why we shouldn't be the go-to source for advanced rehabilitation. And we truly are. We just need to ensure that our patients understand that, and they understand that they have access to all these therapies. If they don't know that they exist, they think that the way they're living is just the way they have to live. And that's not the case, and that's what we're trying to educate our patients about. We have a total of 561 patients enrolled in this program, all which have had 373 surgical and therapeutic procedures, and a lot of them have been combined procedures. We have very important collaborations through Johns Hopkins for transplantation of the hand, upper extremity, and penile transplants. Also with Brigham and Women's, we have a transplant face and extremity program that we have coordinated with them. And through the University of Pittsburgh, we have another association for regenerative medicine. So if any of our patients actually are candidates for transplant, we have the way to plug them in to go through the process. And we are credentialing all these hospitals, so we don't just send the patient away. We go with the patient, we do the surgery, and then we bring the patient back and we continue the aftercare here. The C.A.R.E Summit is something that I just talked to you guys about just a second ago. It's the 8th one that we're gonna have. And one of the most important things about the summit is that we've reached an unprecedented 98% survival rate on patients who get injured in theater. And we've been able to maintain that for some time now. And that can't be it. In my mind, I truly believe that now that we've improved survival rates, the next frontier would be addressing in the acute setting, how do we set up the patient to have the best reconstructive procedures later, downrange, for rehabilitation? We have to continue to push ourselves. If there's anything that can be done in that acute setting, like nerve preservation, or maintaining length in bones, or maintaining some of the soft tissue around it, all of those things are the new things that we need to be teaching our trauma surgeons to be thinking about. We know we can save the patient, but we need to push to save and to have a quality of life. And that's what we're trying to achieve with our CARE program. Like I said, this is some of the associations that we have through NMCSD. We have some research projects with Brigham and Women's. It's about a new lower extremity amputation technique. Essentially, it rearranges a muscle so that these new smart prosthetics can know what the patient wants to do based on the firing of the muscle by the way that they're arranged, using some new prosthetics that are being developed at MIT. Maybe some of you have seen Real Sports from Brian Gumbel. The last month's episode had a whole piece on this. It's fascinating. I recommend everyone to watch it. That's exactly what I'm talking about here. Also at Johns Hopkins, we have a research program ongoing right now, which is we're using stem cell treatment to try to change the skin of the amputation site to make it as thick as the palm of your hand or the sole of your foot. So you can imagine if that skin was that tough, patients would not have as many issues as they have with pain, wound breakdown with a prosthetic, which would probably increase their compliance using their prosthetics. We have a couple other pending grants, one with Harvard, which is really looking at why is it that some patients choose to have a face transplant or a hand transplant versus not choosing it. If we can identify the trends and who will probably benefit from it, then we can identify those patients early so that we can start putting them on a pathway, because it takes a lot to be able to get on one of those lists. We have a couple of protocols going on at NMCSD using Botox to reduce the amount of sweating at the amputation sites, which is an issue with fitting the prosthetics. Also using virtual reality to manage acute procedural pain. We're also trying to figure out a pilot study using grounding as part of wound healing treatments. And our goal is that we can continue to develop and grow as a program so that all the other MTFs, like Bethesda and Walter Reed and BAMC, they have a program like this, so when our patients move around, it's just a matter of just switching teams, but nothing changes. And that's our ultimate goal with this program.
Back in 2010, August 3rd, 2010, I stepped on an IED and I lost my right leg below the knee, as well as like all kinds of other injuries. So, but that was a major one. You know, Project C.A.R.E's got a lot of different things they can do for people. Like their scope of things that they can do to help you is like insane. And if they can't help you, they're gonna help you find somebody that can. Some of like the reduction in pain that they helped me with was for like my scars. They're like really tethered and really sensitive in certain places. On my amputated leg, I had a couple scars that they went in and they fixed and revised. We hit it with laser, with all kinds of different things. If something didn't work, we just found something else to see if it would work, you know. And through trial and error, we finally were able to fix some of the things and reduce some of the pain in both my legs. So I was like really happy about that. Through all the like procedures and stuff that Project C.A.R.E's done for me, it's definitely helped me get back in shape and back to like my activity of the stuff I love to do. It's enabled me to be able to get out and, you know, run track, do field, swim, play seated volleyball, wheelchair basketball, just all these different things to just kind of broaden my horizons on all the different things I can do. And through all the stuff that I've done and excelled in, it's been put out there, and I think like it's helped a lot of people see that even if they get hurt, like that's not the end. There's still more stuff that they can do. They just have to have the will to do it. For somebody that's looking to get some stuff done to increase their quality of life, I definitely recommend them go to Project C.A.R.E, because I mean, even if it just helps a little bit, that's more than where they were sitting at before they went, you know. And if you don't try, you don't know. So
That's all I have. Thank you.
That's all he has? Really? Thank you for your service. Our next panelist is Navy Commander Marie Manuel. She serves in the Navy Reserves and as a registered nurse and past commanding officer of the Volunteer Training Unit at Naval Operations Support Center here in San Diego. She holds 2 master's degrees, has served as the program manager for the C.A.R.E program, and I'm not sure if Dr. Ortiz said it, maybe I missed it. C.A.R.E stands for Comprehensive Advanced Restorative Effort. You certainly saw that in the video and certainly in his presentation. She spearheaded the first 5 C.A.R.E Summit presentations that Dr. Ortiz talked about. And to give you a little better sense of what they're talking about in terms of sharing knowledge and experience between the military and the civilian healthcare world, some of the recent topics have been things like facial reconstruction, full face transplantation, and the future of reconstructive transplantation. You begin to get a sense of that in that video that we just saw. It truly is a remarkable collaboration between the military and the civilian worlds that, again, I suspect that in the not too distant future, unfortunately, some of us in the civilian world may well directly benefit from. But for tonight, let's hear, and please welcome up to the podium, registered nurse Marie Manuel.
Well, good evening, Midway members and friends. It's with great pleasure that I present to you a nurse's point of view. I am not a trauma nurse by trade. I'm actually an oncology nurse. But in the last 15 years of my 22-year career, I've actually been working with wounded warriors and those that are traumatically injured. So after receiving life-sustaining interventions, further care involves advanced reconstructive procedures. As a consequence of these injuries and multiple surgical procedures, many service members are left with multiple scars, physically and emotionally. Tonight, I am going to share 5 stories of 5 service members who were traumatically injured and how they all triumphed despite their injuries. Povis. Okay. Povis suffered a blast injury to his face with an IED in Afghanistan in 2009. His initial reconstruction was done in Landstuhl, Germany. He lost teeth, sustained a mandibular fracture, and the whole lower face part of his face was contorted, as you can see. Mind you, this gentleman was 21 years old. When he came to Balboa, the only thing this gentleman asked for was, I want to be able to kiss a girl. He's 21. It makes sense. After many reconstructive surgeries, this is what happened. This is from the great team of Dr. Ortiz, Dr. Salt, Dr. Gallus, Dr. Douglas, and many of the plastic surgeons at our hospital. Lastly, he also said he didn't want to feel awkward when he kissed a girl. You see this guy? He kisses plenty of girls now. Okay? He's 31 years old. He's doing just fine. Okay? Torin. Tasha, who sits at the table with me, she was the first program assistant as I was the first program manager, remembers Torin. Big, burly Marine. He was rough. He was tough. Okay? This is him. An IED device took the legs of this Marine, who was also serving in Afghanistan at the time. This is him after. Torin was angry, understandably so. He was like 6'3". What is he now? Less than 4 feet. It is a very painful experience. When we first met Torin, he was more angry than a bull. Another thing that made him mad, if you read the paper, back in 2013, he was coming back from a basketball tournament. In the airport, TSA made him take off his prosthetic and his legs were exposed. And he suffered the ultimate humiliation. Okay? He was already self-conscious by the way he looked, and now he felt even worse. He didn't want sympathy, but he wanted people to understand, yes, I am altered, but guess what? I am still a person. And yes, and forever I will be a Marine. So I became his drinking buddy. Let me rephrase that. I became his coffee drinking buddy. Okay? Torin would call me in my office. He would call my cell phone and say, Marie, we need to talk. I knew he was at his lowest point when he said that. I dropped everything I needed to do. Tasha and I would go down, and we would go have coffee with this gentleman, right in the courtyard for hours upon end, just listening to him. In due time, his anger actually lessened, and guess what? It turned into humor. It was enlightening. Torin had a couple of goals in life. Go outdoors again, get back on his feet, find somebody who loved him just for him, and just to live life again. Well, congratulations, Torin. You reached all your goals. Some of you who live up in North County may actually recognize him. Did you know he's the coach at Valley Center JV team and led them to a 15-5 victory season? Next, we have Juan. Music was Juan's life. Either he was playing the guitar or he was banging on some bongo drums, is what I called it. That's all he ever did. Unfortunately, he lost both his legs and his right arm. He was a triple amputee. He stepped on an IED, also serving in Afghanistan back in 2010. But he too is living life. He found love again. All he wanted to do was wear his uniform on his wedding day and to stand. Congratulations, Juan, you did it. One thing he did was go back to playing the drums and still beating along. Juan was actually a transplant candidate, an arm transplant candidate that Dr. Ortiz alluded to. After he found about all the medications that he would have to be on for the rest of his life, he declined and decided, I'm fine with a prosthetic. Jason. Jason. IED blast in 2011. Angry at first. Seems to be a running theme here. Rightfully so. You'll hear from Jason's dad tonight. All I can say is Jason has a wonderful family. A loving dad and a loving mom, loving girls. Best family that any child could ever have. And grandparents, yes. Wait till you hear his story. Here's Jason before. I was happy to participate on his Alive Day. Yes, it is a celebrated thing because you're reborn. And there's Jason, his girls, Gary, Sinise, mom and dad. So I used to babysit those girls when Jason had his appointments. So I have watched them grow. Now, Jason and I laugh all the time after his angry phase, and I treat him like a stepbrother that I wish I never had, but that's okay. We have ongoing jokes about the hair that he really needs to cut, and I'm sorry that he's not here tonight. You guys really would have enjoyed him. He has a great personality and a raw sense of humor, haha, and make you laugh for hours. Brian. Brian was a victim of a traumatic accident and not overseas. In 2013, he was pinned under a truck for 40 minutes. High-speed motorcycle. This is Brian in the ICU. He was in a medically induced coma for a couple of months. But Brian never gave up, spent many, many months in rehab, and had to learn to walk again. Gnarly scars. Contractures set in, and he didn't really think he could walk again.
Oh, I don't know, Brian.
Take a bench if you want. Nope. Just keep going.
And again, congratulations to Brian. There he is, full functioning, arm and leg, spearfishing, with wonderful support from his parents. That's his girlfriend's baby, that's not his. He made sure that I said that. And he found love. Okay. So there's many things that go on being a nurse. I am an OR nurse also. So I also do the clinical side. I go in the OR, we have fun, yes we do. So be careful when you fall asleep. I give great cocktails. You won't remember a thing, it's awesome. This is Dr. Salt, he's the founder of Project C.A.R.E. I just wanted to make sure he got included with this. He and Dr. Ortiz make a wonderful team for this program. They're passionate, they're caring, they work hard. Most importantly, they genuinely care about their patients. Now, being a nurse, you do many other things. You give emotional support, you're a babysitter, you're a coffee drinker, you FaceTime with them whatever time it is, and let me tell you, you get those late night FaceTime calls. You become a counselor, a family therapist, a financial advisor. No, you don't need to buy that Lamborghini. You know, makes no sense, those things. I was Brian's supervisor. He actually worked in my department. Okay, and of course I'm a nurse. And lastly, I am also a dog sitter. This is Mona. I watch her every time she comes to our clinic. Now we know that physical trauma is more readily apparent than psychological trauma. The remaining scars, emotional or physical, are indications of where the service member has been, what they have endured, and where the service member is now. Current practice focuses on rehabilitation that allows an individual to meet the needs of walking, talking, eating, and functioning again. As a clinician, yes, we want to address those basic needs. However, addressing a person's psychological health and self-esteem heals something else. It heals their soul. Thank you.
It's not just the 50-some thousand wounded sailors, Marines, and soldiers who come home, but it's also 50,000 families who are wounded as well, in ways that, as a dad, I can't begin to imagine. And yet, George Ross tonight is going to share perhaps some of his innermost feelings, along with those of his wife, because it's always a team effort, as we all know in life. He served in the Air Force in Vietnam. He had retirement plans until a phone call came along about March 7th, 2011. Again, for those of you who are parents, just imagine that phone call. It's just beyond comprehension. Retirement plans got set aside. They changed their lives to begin caring and supporting their son. As Marie talked about, the importance of family support. I'm sure that's almost make or break in some of these cases. And the sacrifice they made for our country in supporting their son, I think, is beyond anything I and perhaps many of us in this room can imagine. His son is doing much better today. Unfortunately, as you've heard, he couldn't join us tonight. Gary Sinise and some of the support he's received from that organization and others, I think you're going to hear about tonight. It truly is a community, and a very big one, to support each and every one of these wounded men and women who come home from typically overseas, and we're going to hear a lot more about that tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome George to the podium.
Good evening.
Hello, my name is Jason Ross. I am a retired staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. I am a post-mortem disposal technician, and I was injured in Afghanistan March 7, 2011, where I suffered catastrophic injuries. Throughout my recovery, I have been in Germany, Bethesda, now Walter Reed, and Balboa. And over that journey was about a year-long process. At Balboa, I met Marie Manuel and Dr. Salt, who are part of the Project C.A.R.E team. And they have overseen quite a bit of my recovery, and are still overseeing parts of my recovery even to today. As of right now, I am dealing with an injury that I suffered from playing sled hockey. And because of that injury, then because of Dr. Salt's recommendations, I need to stay down as much as I can. And so, apologies for not being able to be there. Wish I could have been there to speak with you, as well as answer any questions that you may have had. And I am very sure that everyone there who is there, they'll be able to answer any questions if you have anything regarding to my care or injuries or whatnot. And if they aren't able to answer them directly, they should be able to relay any questions to me, and I should be able to get back to you, hopefully within a reasonable amount of time. So hope you all have a good evening and enjoy the presentations. Thank you.
Okay, that's Jason. And this is Jason also, getting ready to go to the Marine Corps Ball. Now, what I felt today would be a good idea, so you guys could get to know Jason a little bit, is just to see who he is, rather than talk about the 240 surgeries he's had, or I guess it's 245 actually, to the length of the recovery, how long he was in the hospital, and that sort of thing. Just more to understand who the person is, rather than just a name and a number. As I said, this is him getting ready for the Marine Corps Ball. One of the things I wanted to point it out is, if you noticed when he was in his chair, how much he was leaning on his arm. He's holding himself up pretty well like that. Two points on that. One, the right arm was very nearly amputated because of the blast injuries. You'll see her picture shortly, but his primary nurse basically said, leave the arm on, give it a chance, and it's fully functional. Well, I think it's rated at 90% functional, which is more than me. And he cannot put the weight on. Right after we made that video, we immediately went back down, lay down. He can't stay up very long. So anyway, that's a little bit of background on that. But again, the Marine Corps Ball, he's out there partying and having a good time with his friends and such. And this is things he likes to do when he can. That's him with his eldest daughter, his first daughter. That's obviously well before the injuries. He was a very caring and dedicated dad himself. And that's him and I at the top of Mount Fuji. We hiked that with the Boy Scouts. Actually, we've hiked it a couple of times. He was very much into the Boy Scouts. He's an Eagle Scout. That's Staff Sergeant Manusa with him. Staff Sergeant Manusa was the reason he became a Marine. Quite an interesting story. When he was going to look at what branch to go into, the bank of recruiting offices that were right there, the Air Force, Army, and Navy, all three of them, I don't know what was going on, maybe it was just a weird day or something, but all three of them were very sloppy and unkept, which I was embarrassed. I'm Air Force, and the Air Force guy was not there the way I would like. And And then Joseph Manusa, Staff Sergeant Manusa, he shows up basically looking like that. And Jason said, "That's what I want." And he became a Marine right there. That's Jason with his youngest brother, Sean. Jason stood about 6'2", and as you see, she's much taller than Sean. Sean said that it was totally unfair because my wife and I, we have 4 sons, and he complained about, you know, all of his brothers because they had either the height or the physical appearance or everything, and Sean got all the leftovers. So, but Jason and Sean, they're very close anyway. All the brothers are close. That's David, the next oldest brother. I apologize, I don't have a picture of George, the oldest brother, but there's a lot of good joking that goes on between David and Jason. David was a wrestling champion, Northern California wrestling champion, and he would continually beat up on Jason going through high school. And Linda, my wife, she told David one day, I said, you gotta back off on that because Jason's gonna get bigger than you. And well, David came home one time, I think it was early into Jason's senior year, and suddenly Jason was bigger than David. And David said, "Oh," and Jason was also a wrestler. So David backed off. That's them at my 50th birthday party. David is standing on a platform, and that's the only way he could be taller than Jason. That's him on my bike, just having fun. And him exploring a cave. That's I believe that was actually in Iwo Jima. He went off. And there's him just getting ready to take off for Afghanistan. Well, actually, that was the 26 Mu, which turned into Afghanistan. In his right hand, the case on the right hand is actually a banjo. He wanted to learn how to play the banjo. And there's lots of stories behind different things he did, but we still have that banjo and actually 2 more now. That was General Amos. He's the commandant of the Marines at the time, pinning on his Purple Heart. And Jason, for those who don't know him, he was EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal Tech. And he had just made senior just prior to going to Afghanistan. And for this particular session, you can't see it too well up there, but we wanted to have the crab on his uniform. Well, nobody had one handy except a master blaster who was there. So he took his off, gave it to General Amos, and General Amos pinned it on him. And I said, "So I guess that makes you a master now." General Amos gave it to you? It's there, you know. And this is him in recovery. I think this was the very first day after spending 4 months in intensive care, being able to go outside. And he was just tickled pink. You notice the color of his skin, that he looks like he has a nice tan. And he's been inside for 4 months. That was because of one of the medications he was taking. We called it the Smurf pill. It would it had the potential to turn the color of your skin red, tan, blue, brown, or yellow. Well, that's what he got. And he said, "You got a great tan," you know. So And there's Dr. Malone. She's the one that actually saved his arm. She has been she has been an amazing woman and doctor for us. She has since, I believe, retired. And that's some of the physical therapy. We're letting him try to figure out how to operate a power chair. As you can see, he's still pretty emaciated, if you will. He's lost a lot of weight. And at one of the sessions, we got in there, and I was very much involved in all of that, helping him stay up, and got involved in his treatment. And there, you can see he's starting to put on some muscle. The bandage is still on the right arm, where the major injury was. His arm was nearly severed at that point. And that's us with Gary. We've gotten to know Gary pretty well, and actually a number of other of the foundations that have come through to help us and many of the other veterans who have been injured. While Jason was at the, let's see, that was the Bethesda Walter Reed, but I think it was still just Bethesda at the time. President Obama actually came and visited Jason 5 times. You never hear anything about in the news about this going on, and whether you like him or his politics or whatever, he himself is actually a pretty nice guy. We'll just go from there. And last year, Jason decided to take he has 2 daughters, and their friends. You can sort of barely see them in the back, but he took them to Legoland for Halloween because he wanted to get out and do something different. And this is Jason doing one of his favorite things. He's out at the shooting range, and he has gotten to be very good with the various weapons that he has. But that's the end of the pictures. But what I wanted to share with you, now that you got a little taste of a little bit Jason and what he does or did, he has a joke that he likes to share. And I know he's a Marine, but it's a joke. It's okay. You can listen to it. Forrest Gump dies, and he goes up to the pearly gates, and St. Peter's up there, and he said, "Well, Forrest, see, you've had quite an interesting life. I need you to answer 3 questions. They're not really difficult questions, I hope, but it's important that you listen and answer the questions correctly." And Forrest, in his perfect way, he said, "Okay." And they said, "Forrest, which 2 days begin with the letter T?" So Forrest stops, thinks. 10 minutes later, he said, "Today and tomorrow." And St. Peter said, "Okay, I'll go with that one." But this next question is really important. It's kind of a math question. I need to know exactly how many seconds are in a year. And Forrest goes, "Oh." And he thinks, and he's looking at his hands, and he said, 12. St. Peter said, 12? He said, "All right. Explain that one to me, please." He said, "Well, you have January 2nd, February 2nd, March." And St. Peter said, "Okay, you got me there." And the next question, he said, "Now this one's, Forrest, this one's really, really important. You've got to tell me exactly the right answer." Forrest said, okay. And he said, I want to know if you can tell me God's given name. And without a hesitation at all, Forrest looked at Andy. And St. Peter said, Andy? Okay, I give up. How'd you come up with Andy? He says, well, me and Mama, we used to go to church every Sunday, and we'd stand up at church, and we'd see, Andy walks with me, Andy talks with me. That's Jason's joke. That's his favorite joke. Jason has been doing a lot of different things. We talked about. I should have included a couple of slides of him with his sled hockey. He seems to have really fallen in love with sled hockey, and that is precisely why he's not here today. He was he because of his condition, he has to wear a prosthetic that basically encompasses most of his upper torso area. And he was, by wearing that, it restricts his movement. He, like the other guys, they can shift and get around by, changing the weight, where he can't do that as well, not even close. And he was going in one direction. The play turned and went exactly the opposite direction all of a sudden. So he shifted his weight as quick as he could, but it also caused him to fall over, and he slammed into a wall. And when he slammed into the wall, it broke down a lot of the tissue and such, and his pelvic bone was showing again. That's why he's not here now. He's recovering from that. He is an extreme case for many of the different things that have happened to him, including that weird disease with the Smurf pill. He had a 10-pound piece of heterotopic ossification removed, which is the largest chunk that they'd ever seen in Bethesda at the time. Things like that have happened to him, but he keeps coming through with a very positive. And the fact that he's been able to work with folks like Dr. Ortiz and Marie that have come along has helped maintain a very positive aspect on his outcome. So we're very grateful. He is very grateful, and we just want to say thank you to you and the team very much. And that's pretty much it for me. Scott?
George, thank you so much for sharing, truly from the heart. Again, as a parent, it's hard to listen to that. I can't begin to think about what you and Linda have gone through and the future you have, but at least you have your son with you. Marie, how do you cope with a seemingly unending stream, river, torrent of these broken and bleeding bodies, seemingly day after day as part of your career? How do you deal with that?
I like it.
Explain.
Blood, guts, gore, that is my world.
Why?
Because I know I can help them. And that's one thing and one reason why I became a nurse, is to help. It is part of my personality, every which way, and I will do anything and everything to help a patient.
And forgive me, but I'll ask anyway. The follow-up question is, how do you cope when you can't help a patient? Every patient doesn't have a great outcome.
Oh, no, you always find a way. You get very creative.
Just from a personal, mental outlook
Yeah.
kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Can
You know what? You are there as the cheerleader.
Okay.
You help them, like I said, emotionally. And it doesn't matter.
But you're
going
going to lose some games once in a while.
No, I won't lose.
All right.
Of all people, Jason knows that.
Okay.
Jason and I did not get along from the very beginning. We actually butted heads more than we got along. And it was only after therapy, after listening to him, that we became friends. Like I said, he is now the stepbrother I never wanted. But it's something that we were able to share, and he also made me realize how much I need to enjoy my life. So it goes both ways. There's reciprocity in the healing process.
Sure. Thank you. Dr. Ortiz, you talked a lot about it from a more of a programmatic standpoint, and as the leader of the research and education programs, that's certainly understandable, and thank you for your service. What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night?
Yeah, what in this context?
Well, my kids. No,
Yeah, I know. Aside?
I think for any surgeon is the idea that that you're not going to come up with the solution that you're hoping for your patient. You fear the complication and you live with it, and that's some of the things that really keep me at night. But I live with it and I deal with it. And
so, what do? Do you compartmentalize it? I mean, how do you let it go?
You don't let it go. It's just part of you. It just helps you for the next patient.
How?
It just gives you strength. You learn from every single patient. Sometimes when you think you're not winning the game with the patient teaches you that they have won, and you stay back and you understand that, and then you take that energy to the next patient.
Thank you. Laura, I think you have one. I can't see the spotlight.
Hi, thank you all for being here tonight. It was wonderful to hear what you had to say. This question is for George. I understand that the Gary Sinise Foundation has constructed a specially adapted home for your son. And if you could share with us what some of those features are in the home, what does Jason find to be helpful for him, or the most useful adaptations that were available?
Yes. The features that are most helpful to Jason right now is simply the space, how much room he has to maneuver and get around. You have to appreciate the fact that most of Jason's friends, not most, I can't say that, but a lot of Jason's friends are in wheelchair. And so they need extra space to get around. He and Marie showed Torn up there. He and Torn get along really well. They are in wheelchairs, and they need the extra space. The activities in the home for like cooking or stuff like that, yeah, they've lowered counters, they've placed ovens, access to tools and everything at a lower level so he can get to them. Cabinets that are raised up, they have pull-down shelves. Those things are there for there, but again, I would have to say the biggest aspect would be just space. There's room to move. One of the challenges we had early on trying to find a place to live when we came out here from Bethesda, we probably visited 5 or 6 different ADA homes, but we would go down, like Jason would go down a hallway, but he'd have to go into a room, turn around and come back, or back up completely in the hallway, because he couldn't maneuver, there's no maneuvering. And so that is such a big point for their life, just being able to move.
Thank you. Marie, I have a question for you. Did I hear correctly? You said something about this is my alive day and reborn? Explain that. Or was that, I'm sorry.
Well, Alive Day is something that these guys celebrate. Okay,
Meaning?
March 7th, the day that he hit the blast, or the blast hit him.
Oh.
Every March 7th now is his Alive Day. We did something. We now live up in Fallbrook, and the property is part of an HOA. And there was an HOA meeting. We went to that meeting, handed out flyers, and invited people to come to Jason's 5 Alive, a big one. Jason was not supposed to live more than 2 years. Right now he's on 8, but and doing quite well. But we had the 5 Alive party at the house, the president of the HOA came up to me and he said, I have been trying to get people together for the last 10 years. Is you guys show up and have one party and everybody is here.
I wonder why.
But the Alive Day is very important to them.
I can begin to imagine. 8 years, did you say?
Yes.
8 years,
8 years.
And going. So I'll ask my question this way. If you could write a script for 2 years from today for your son, what would it be?
Wow. If I could see it
Sure.
realistically, I'd say having the full use of his arms and shoulders so that he could, in fact, get into a hand bike to go travel around on his own power. That is something I think he would really love to do.
Independence.
Yeah, more of that independence
Right.
is just, he has to get around everywhere in his wheelchair with power. He cannot use the wheelchair arms motion and moving the wheels like many of the other people can, simply because it causes what's called a shearing effect on his wounds that he sits on. I wanted to find out more about some of that condition that you had talked about for skin, building the skin up. I want to know more about that because that's something that would be very, that he works with.
Okay. Laura, you have a question.
Yes, hi, thank you, everyone. You're all extraordinary. I have two questions, actually. One is to George. Is Jason planning on being involved again with the sled? Will he be able to come back? And the second is to Dr. Ortiz and Marie. You mentioned how each experience that's very difficult, it's like a conditioning process that gets you set up for the next situation. How do you coach family members like George and his family where it isn't an ongoing process where they've been conditioned through different experiences? This is their first time around.
To answer the question, is he going to get? Yes, he is. He would not give a sled hockey at all right now. That's too important to him.
Good.
I think in my experience when in trying to coach families to cope also with, because they're living it as well, you just have to be very honest in what you're thinking and letting them know what's going to be a problem and what's not going to be a problem. Not trying to sugarcoat things, just setting expectations that are appropriate and are real. I think most families and most patients really respond to that more than just, I think you sort of underplay what they're going through when you just say it's going to be fine. And I think that's one of the most important things, is being very honest with the condition and what you think is going to be the progress and how long it's going to take. I think it's probably one of the most important things for both the patients and the family.
Marie, anything to add?
Honesty is the best thing. It was very difficult to explain to families, this is the new life, and you have to adjust. And we adjust with them, but we will get through it, and it always turns out for the positive.
Dr. Ortiz, in terms of the research and clinical trials and so on that you're involved with, what do you see as the potential impact on civilian healthcare 5 years from now with what you're working on?
I think it's very intricate. It goes both ways. A lot of these research protocols we're having are through DoD grants, but with a lot of our civilian counterparts. And what we do is that we end up having some research protocols that we can include both civilians and active duty military.
Relatively quickly? I mean, are these 5-year projects? Or,
yeah, no, I think that's more of a reasonable time frame. It's 5 years. It's never as fast as you think it's going to be.
Of course. Or want it to be.
Or want it to be. But certainly everything that we do, and historically, most of the new advancements in surgical care, certainly in trauma, have been all from military combat-related
battlefield
experience. So very, very related.
Okay. Laura.
Hi, Marie. You talked about some of the challenges to the more negative side of what you do. Can you talk about what has been your most rewarding success as a nurse?
Long-term friendships. So a lot of people say, well, nurses, you just take care of somebody and you move on to the next patient. That is not true. I have made very long friendships with all my patients, with all of their families, and actually still keep in touch with a lot of them, and even some of my oncology patients from back in the 90s. But you become part of that family, and you share those life experiences with them, and guess what? They actually share some of those with you as well.
Good evening. Thank you for sharing your professional and personal experiences with the Wounded Warrior community. I think you were very gracious in highlighting a lot of the positive attributes of the program over the last decade. How have we societally failed the Wounded Warriors, and what could we do as laypersons to support your missions, your family, your professional missions to help rehabilitate and to ensure that these warriors are taken care of for the next several decades?
I think in many ways. I think I wouldn't put it as in failed, because I think if most people don't understand how they can help, I don't think it's a failure. It's just education. I think a lot of our Wounded Warriors, I think when they come back and they have all these surgeries, 245 surgeries. That's incredible. Think about the amount of time that's being devoted to hospital life. Your life is revolves around an appointment, surgical procedure, another appointment. But I think the way that our community can support a lot of these Wounded Warriors is by including them by jobs that you think that they can do. A lot of these guys are extremely able, and they do and have a lot of responsibilities, more than any person their age doing another job in the civilian side. You just give them the opportunity, because they're still completely fine here. They're just trying to find themselves and how they're going to fit into society again. And I think by opening doors, by offering jobs, not that we need to go out and just be seeking it, but I think keeping it in mind, including them in our regular activities in our community, I think it's the most important thing that we can do. Also advocating so that a lot of these programs continue. The turnover for active duty military surgeons is pretty high. So we need to continue to support a lot of these programs so they stay alive despite us being here or not. And that's only going to happen if we continue to have these relationships with our civilian counterpart hospitals, because they're not going anywhere. We might form part of their teams, though, when we're done with when we retire or when we get out of the military. But I think that's by showing support for these programs and ensuring and making sure that whoever's deciding budgets, they're allocating it well and ensuring that it's actually going to the right programs and the right supports. I think that's the best way the community can support us and support these members, for sure.
For the two medical professionals, could you touch on a little bit about what I would presume, the undercurrent of PTSD is, in terms of you're dealing with physical capabilities and injuries and so on. Could you talk a little bit more about the mental health side?
It's rampant, and it's a real problem, because it's a roadblock to seeking care, to feeling better, to improving function. And
are the resources there to deal with it?
The resources are there.
Okay.
The resources are there. I know there's a lot of challenges in the civilian sector, especially in the VA, but right now, at least for the active duty service members, there is access.
Programs.
There are programs that exist, and we've improved our relationships with the VAs and all the DoD facilities so that some of these patients can come back to receive mental health through the active duty hospitals like Balboa.
Marie, anything to add? No? Laura, do you have someone?
I have two questions for Marie. Are there many of these people that come back wounded that have no family support? And the other question is, if the individual that is injured comes back and is married, do the marriages stay together? Or does the spouse just can't handle it?
I've seen it all. So those who don't have support, it's very sad. So the hospital becomes their family. We take them on. And so we are the ones that accompany them to their appointments. We're the ones that go sit with them in the galley. We're the ones that go and sit with them and have coffee. We become their family members. We become the extended family. And then you have other families who basically take them on. I know George has taken on quite a few of those who don't have families, and then they have been able to rehabilitate. Sadly, yes, I've seen a lot of divorces, and it is very heartbreaking. Vows aren't taken well, and it's very hard for the significant other to cope with it. And so therefore, it's very challenging for them, and there have been quite a few who have run away. We've offered services, counseling services for the family for the significant other. And it's not just the female leaving the male. We've seen males leave the females as well. Yeah, so it does go both ways, and it is heartbreaking. But then when you meet people like the spouses of Juan and Torin, you know, you can find love. You know, you can find that lasting relationship, regardless of what they look like, what they've been through, and it becomes pure again. So it's refound its spirit, basically, that its love still exists in its purest form.
Great answer. Laura, do you have someone?
Yeah, I had a question regarding cross-pollination between services. Are you guys looking into that with something other than just pure Navy, Air Force, Army? Is there something about a unified front? I know that Walter Reed and Bethesda are a commingling there, but again, are there works with the other services?
I think there's nothing set up as of now through the C.A.R.E program that involves all the branches, but that's one of our long-term goals. So you can see there's 586 patients that are enrolled right now, and to me, that number is too low. We still need to get the existence of our program in our own community to be known, so that a lot of our patients can enjoy it. And once we have that set up and we can start setting up on all the MTFs, then absolutely. Right now we do it for other types of care, so there's no reason why we can't do it for some of our comeback cares.
Thank you. I have a question for each of you. If there's one thing, each from your own perspectives, that you would like us to take away from tonight, one thing, what would it be?
I'll say that I want to ensure to you guys and to our community that we are 100% devoted to improving the quality of life. We understand that surviving is not just enough, but quality of life is extremely important. And we are really committed in figuring out whatever it is that we need to do and finding the person that knows how to do it to address that with the patients.
Thank you. Marie?
He took my answer. You know, in the healthcare field, we go into this profession because we are committed. We are committed to making life better for our patients, to sustain life, to improve the quality of life, and to ensure that there's quality of life for those who are around them as well. So we don't just look at the patients, we look at everybody that is involved in that person's life.
Holistic? George?
from my perspective, there are questions about, what can the general society do? What about the PTSD? What I'd like you to take back from this is to know that we are trying to embrace everything. We're trying to get all of the service members who are dealing with a myriad of different issues. We want the society to be involved as well. We want the population to understand that these are productive and contributable people to society in general, and don't turn away from them. If you see somebody out there that doesn't have a smile, share yours with them. Bring them in, bring them on.
Thank you. Laura?
I was curious about what other places support C.A.R.E? Like, what other foundations can people get involved with or donate to, or what can people do to support these types of programs?
There's many different ways. There's specific foundations that you can donate through the Henry Jackson Foundation specifically, if that's something that you're interested in. But mostly, at least for the summit, that's one of the things that we can do. But I think by supporting research, I think it helps significantly. A lot of the research is really limited with budgets. But whenever you are donating to any military facility or any military program, I just recommend that you make it as broad as possible, because the red tape about what can be done and cannot be done with that money is extremely tight. So I would say that if you want to make a contribution to research, let's say, that you don't get too specific, because otherwise, if there's not an opportunity to research in that area, then that can never be done or used. So I just recommend that if you are going to donate, that you donate to in a broad spectrum Henry Jackson, and I don't know if Marie knows of any other foundations that you think that you can.
Or George, in your experience, the Gary's group or others that are out there?
I was going to say that depending on what kind of involvement you want to be with that, there are many. There are literally thousands of foundations out there available to help in various different ways. What I would suggest is, before you get involved with any one of them or any group of them, research. Some of them are very, very good foundations. Some of them are not. You want to make sure where you're putting your resources, your energies, you put them to areas and groups that are very, very positive. Also, get involved with the government. On election day, vote. Know what's being on the ballot. Vote for the right things that can help, because there's stuff goes on all the time, and it doesn't happen with the government. So,
thank you, Laura.
Hello, my name's Heather. I was going to say, recently my family has been involved because my dad's a retired firefighter, and Corey Iverson, he was a firefighter in Ventura that got killed, and his wife has a foundation called the Iverson Foundation Active Awareness, and that's about PTSD and first responders. So it's a really good foundation. You can check it out online, but she's doing a lot for awareness and stuff for first responders, military, all types of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Here, we've got one right behind you, sir.
Hi. I just want to thank you first for the presentation. It was very informative. But for those of us who are civilian, and most of us are retired, if we wanted to volunteer to help with the C.A.R.E program, physically volunteer, is that something that's available for civilians, or do we have to be military?
No, you do not have to be military. It's through the Red Cross volunteer program at the hospital. They have a process in which you can be cleared to have military base access, so you can participate in a lot of our activities. And there's plenty of volunteers at the hospital. There's always something that can be done.
Do you need
So I
more?
highly
Do you need more
encourage her.
volunteers?
Absolutely.
Is there a
They
need?
can always take, yes, absolutely. The Red Cross through Naval Medical Center, yes.
This gentleman, yep.
I was curious, looking back since the advancements in prosthetics care, in the actual prosthetics since Vietnam to where we are now, what do you see ideally maybe the next 10 or 15 years, what's going on in prosthetic research and prosthetic care?
With some of the new prosthetics that have been developed at MIT, essentially can sense any kind of twitch on the muscle. That's why it's so important for us to change the way that we're doing amputations. Amputations is something that has been done since the Civil War and hasn't really changed much. And it's time for us to figure out a way to fit the amputation technique to the new advances in prosthetics. There's been some new prosthetics that have been developed that can even pick up the most slightest signal that even if a person has a prosthetic, the normal twitch when you cross your leg and you are doing this, you can start doing that just because you're thinking it. So there's plenty of opportunity in terms of these smart technologies. We just need to make sure that we start tailoring the way that we do the amputation to be able to have those prosthetics work. The technology is out there. The issue is that they're expensive. And the problem is that a lot of them are experimental. So they're not covered by insurance. So for the civilian side, it's extremely difficult for a patient to get one of these expensive prosthetics. In the military, it's a different story because we have budgets that are specifically dedicated to that. And we're constantly trying to push for better and better and better. But these need to be updated. So there's some really cool stuff out there. And I really, like I mentioned that clip from Real Sports, and I highly recommend everyone to watch it because it's really impressive. It's really impressive.
Thank you. Is that it for now? Lady, one last question. Laura, over here on your right.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. It was great. My question is related more to the unseen things. Obviously, this is a huge challenge that these people are facing, and nobody's choosing it. What kind of traits do you see in the patients who do better faster? And how do you help the people who aren't recovering as fast, like emotionally, mentally, physically, do better by modeling the people that are doing better?
You know, I think two things. Number one is mental health and their willingness to seek out help and not see it as a defeat or a source of weakness, right? So having the insight that they need to make sure that they're training their brain about how they see themselves and what their goals are just as important. And I think number two, but not because it's less important, probably it's one of the most significant things in the care of a patient is how supportive their families are, or the families that they choose, their friends. People who have people that want to make them and feel better and do better, they do better. They really do. But unfortunately, that's not the case for a lot of these service members. And part of it is because they alienate a lot of their family members and friends because they don't feel good about themselves. So you see, the mental health and the family and support network are so tightly connected and so important in the recovery of patients. I would go as far as saying that it's not about the physical injury. Someone can have a minimal physical injury compared to someone who is a bilateral amputee and still not do as expected. And it's all that support network and mental health.
Thank you. I don't know about you, but I've had my heart broken a couple times tonight and also warmed in some ways listening to these people and their dedication across the board, whether it's a father or a healthcare professional. Thank you all for coming tonight. Please join me in one big round of applause of appreciation. Thank you all and good night.